Welcome to another story made by Oracle 1. The ancient library of Briarwood was a bastion of silence and shadow nestled deep within the eldritch folds of the countryside. With its towering oak shelves groaning under the weight of countless tomes and the faint scent of musty parchment ever lingering in the still air, it beckoned to those who sought refuge in stories, mysteries, and the wisdom of ages past. To most, it was a sanctuary. To Martin Grayson, its newest patron, it would become something far darker. Martin was a quiet man, solitary by nature, with a timid smile and eyes that seemed to always flicker nervously about. A librarian by profession, but driven more by fascination than necessity, he had recently relocated to Briarwood to escape the turmoil of city life. The Briarwood Library was a welcome sanctuary from the cacophony of his past, a place where he could tuck himself away with books and lose himself in the pages. But on his very first evening visit, something strange began to stir. It started innocuously enough. Martin wandered aisles of towering shelves in the dim twilight cast by old brass lamps. He reached for a volume titled The Forgotten Diaries, but it slipped from his trembling fingers. Annoyed, he bent to retrieve it, but when he looked up to replace the book, the titles lining the shelves across from him seemed to shift in a way that caused his heart to skip. Where once the spine had read echoes of the past, now it spelled "Watch your steps." His breath caught. Assuming it was a trick of his eyes, or perhaps his nerves, Martin shook his head and moved on. But the unsettling sensation clung to him. More strangely, as he walked down the aisles, more books appeared to rearrange their titles. On one shelf he noticed Whispers in the Dark morphing into You Are Alone. Elsewhere, a collection once labeled Legends of Briarwood transformed to read We Know You Came. Martin's pulse quickened as he stumbled into the reading room, where soft leather chairs and stained glass lamps usually welcomed readers. Tonight, the air was thick with something unspoken, as if the library itself had taken a breath and held it, watching and waiting. He wanted to dismiss the flickering shadows as mere illusions, but then his fingers brushed against a book lying flat on a table. The cover was unfamiliar, pitch black with no title. He flipped it open and discovered instead of words, the pages were blank, until, slowly, letters of ink began to seep out, forming words. I see you. His skin prickled. The library whispered secrets only he seemed to hear, spoke in a language composed of bound pulp and ink, and watched with eyes made of paper and glue. Martin felt his heartbeat drum loud in his chest, a cacophony to the otherwise silent room. He tried to stand, but his legs felt heavy as if rooted to the floor. Panic began to tangle his thoughts. He ran to the exit doors, but the heavy wooden doors groaned and refused to open. The library now seemed alive, a colossal beast breathing and watching, so vast with thousands of empty watchful eyes, books. An oppressive voice seemed to murmur from the very aisles, "You cannot leave. We are your story now." Martin stumbled back into the dim stacks, desperation mounting. He wanted to cry out but found his voice was caught somewhere between his throat and the walls themselves. He needed answers. Why was the library tormenting him like this? What did it want? His eyes darted across the shelves. There, in the faint blue glow of the emergency lights, the books spelled out a new message. Remember the pact. Cold ice formed in his veins as recognition flickered. A memory, buried deep and half-forgotten, emerged from the haze. Many years ago, in a different life and a different time, Martin had been a part of something sinister, a secret gathering in Briarwood, a pact made in blood and whispers beneath the roots of these very grounds. He had thought those memories suppressed, erased by distance and time. But the library knew. He collapsed onto a nearby chair, the message within the books unraveling his secrets like a noose tightening around his neck. You broke your word. Another flicker. You hid from us. The air grew colder, and the lights dimmed further as the library closed its throat around him. Then the books began to move. Slowly, the volumes slid themselves from their shelves, pages rustling like dry leaves under ancient feet. They arranged themselves in a circle around Martin, forming words and symbols that twisted his name in tight vines of ink and shadow. Martin Grayson, betrayer, forgotten. His pulse thundered in his ears, the room humming with the voices of 1,000 unwritten tales, angrily whispered from the pages. The very space seemed to pulse and shift, the ceiling warping into a sky of ancient trees, their branches laden not with leaves but parchments. The roots beneath his feet whispered, "Remember the pact, Martin. Remember, or be lost." It was then he saw her. A figure flickering between the stacks, a woman cloaked in dust and twilight, her eyes hollow and endless. She bent down, voiced the sound of torn paper. "You cannot escape what you have written, Martin. The library is your story, and the story will end where it began." Terrified, Martin understood. The library was no mere building. It was a living record of every soul that had ever dared to bind themselves in Briarwood. The pact was a binding of life to story, a commitment to be forever a part of the pages. Those who broke it were condemned to remain, ink-bound and forgotten, a tale unfinished. Summoning what courage remained, Martin tried to speak. "Please, I want to make it right." The ghostly woman smiled, a smile fragile and terrible. "To undo what was done is to erase yourself. The pages require your story to end, Martin. And we will write it for you." Suddenly, the books began to flip open, letters flying off their pages and swirling around him like a storm. They wrapped him in a cocoon of ink, dragging his body toward the heart of the library. As he slipped between the racks and shelves, the last thing he heard was the whisper of the books closing shut, sealing another secret within their endless volumes. Days later, an old janitor found an open book on a table in the reading room with a fresh page filled in ink. Martin Grayson, entry sealed. No one ever saw Martin again in Briarwood. But sometimes late at night, those who lingered too long in the dark stacks swear they hear whispers interwoven among the turning pages, stories that watch, that wait, and that forever bind. For more stories, like and subscribe.